friends? Welcome back to the Film Alchemist podcast, the show where we look at movies we love, break them apart to find out what gives them their magic. I'm your host, Josh Griffey, joined again by my friend and co-host,
Alex Dandino.
Alex Dandingo. Welcome back. New month, new theme, guys. This month, the pod questions reality. So these are all films where the reality of the world with which we're spending our time, us and the protagonist have no idea what's going on. What's real? Where do we draw the line? So today we're starting with probably the easiest to discern the reality of all these movies we're going to talk about. Total Recall, one of my all-time favorite movies.
Yes, 2012, Colin Farrell, Len Weissman.
Nope.
Oh shit, I watched the
This
wrong.
must be a bad implant.
Oh, this is a bad implant.
Wrong. That's wrong. I don't know. Was that even a thing? No. Alex, this was a debate. We should do this right out the top. Me, my brother, and my wife watched this to prepare for the show.
Yeah.
Where does this rank in all-time best Arnold movies?
Ooh, this might be one.
So I was like, is this the best Arnold movie?
No, not for me. Like, my favorite Arnold movie is still T2.
Because I was like, there's T2, Predator.
Yeah.
I was like, the Conans can get knocked down below Total Recall. My wife said Kindergarten Cop. I was like, ooh, that's sneaky awesome. Kindergarten Cop is amazing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Are you talking about movies, all movies ranked below Junior? Or are we...
Oh, yeah. We'll take Junior out. It's
cool.
too good.
As long as we're all in agreement that Junior's the best.
We're in agreement on
the best Arnold we'll ever get. I actually agree with Amy. Like,
True Lies
is probably my favorite Arnold.
What's the best Arnold movie?
I think
to
True
you?
Lies is my favorite Arnold movie, but it's not because of Arnold, so it's kind of a disqualifier. I think my favorite Arnold movie is probably Kindergarten Cop.
Yeah, that's what my wife said.
But
I think Predator is my favorite Arnold movie.
I think Total Recall, though, might be third.
This is my thing, and again, it's a close ranking, but I would go Predator, Terminator 2, Total Recall. I think that's my rankings. Kindergarten Cop 4.
I would say Kindergarten...
But again, these are like separated so little. That's not a knock on Total Recall. I love Total Recall.
I would say...
Alex, when was the last time you had watched Total Recall? Give me your opening gambit on this amazing Paul Verhoeven joint.
I mean, I was looking up trivia. Did you know this was the last movie to not use like mainly just CGI?
Really?
For its visual effects? This was the last movie that
they
used,
have that effect constantly where it's like they port in a background. So as people are walking through, their edges are fuzzy.
They used this was the last movie to use like practical camera effects, apparently, which is pretty cool. I mean, dude, this is probably apex Paul Verhoeven. Like, this is probably, to me, like, I know everyone loves RoboCop. This might be my favorite of his movies, though.
This movie is way better than RoboCop, and I love RoboCop.
Yeah, I love RoboCop too, but this movie, like this, and then Starship Troopers are my two favorite Paul Verhoeven movies. Like, I think
we're just gonna do rankings all day. No, Alex, you missed it. It's Total Recall, RoboCop, Starship Troopers. Welcome to the list, pod.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, I think last time I saw this, it was recently. This was probably of all the movies we've watched for this pod. I think this is the one I've probably seen the most recently. Next to another one, actually part of this month. It's weird. I actually watch a lot of questioning reality movies recently before we started doing this. But Total Recall I probably watched like a year or two ago, just on a whim. I'm not really sure why. It was either at an event or we just decided to all watch it together. But it's just, I mean, this is just a classic. This is a classic Arnold movie. It's classic Paul Verhoeven. And then on top of that, it's classic Michael Ironside, man. I fucking love Michael Ironside in this movie. Dude, God damn, he's so good.
He's so good. Yeah, I think I'm with you, man. This movie is kind of ever present in my mind because I watch this movie more regularly than most. I'm not an enormous movie rewatcher all the time.
Right.
Because there's so many good things out to watch. It's hard to even keep track, let alone just going back and being like, yeah, I'll watch Beethoven for the 80th time. But I just dig this movie, man. I like a lot of the practical effects. I like the big sci-fi. I like the big action. it's just fun. It's just like one of those movies. I'm like, what's a fun movie? Total Recall is about as fun as you can have watching a movie.
I mean, it's
Let me ask you this, Alex. This movie, dream, implanted dream, or exposed reality? Where do you fall? Because as we go through the movie, there are a couple moments where I think it's the most clever thing the movie does, is they're constantly having, again, this is one of these game movies, right? Where they're setting up a premise where is it or is it not? And they're constantly throughout the movie trying to add pieces to sway you back and forth without ever giving the game away. Right?
Right.
Where do you fall?
I think Quaid is Quaid, but I think Quaid is a secret agent.
So you think this is the reality that we're watching?
I do.
I think this is all implanted dream. And I think there are really sad repercussions of that. But I have one piece of evidence that I think is indisputable, right?
Okay.
So as Arnold is about to get his implant, right? One of the guys says, "Oh, blue sky on Mars, that he's going to have fun with this, right?" Now, when that little lackey says that, this is still in the real world before the experiment happens that would or would not divert
because of the ending?
Yeah, because only two people before the ending would know about the blue sky theory, right? And that is Hauser and Cohagen. They're the only two people that could have known that was even a possibility. So for this lackey to know, that has to mean this is all part of the pre-program.
I'll buy that. Yeah.
And again, doesn't sway the movie at all.
No,
I think it's really a fun.
This is the most important thing about this. Like, this is the most amazing thing about Total Recall, by the way, is this movie should, like, this is the thing that Inception tries to do that doesn't work because you just, like, by the end are so fucking annoyed you can't, like, you don't care. This movie, you do not care which one is reality. Like, the entire time you're trying to figure it out just because, like, it's like part of the game for yourself, but it literally does not matter to your enjoyment of the movie. Like,
no,
I have never been.
It actually changes. It's really clever because
it's really clever.
If, like me, because I've always watched it wanting to believe that Arnold was an exposed secret agent because, like all people, we have wish fulfillment in movies. Like, God, what if that's me?
Right.
What if I don't have to go to work tomorrow because I'm going to be kicking ass and seeing 3 titties in a row? You know, you're like, I'm ready. But when you watch it this time, and I was like, I guess I had never really pondered it until now. I was like, oh, of course. Yeah, like, this is definitely the implanted dream.
Right.
It changes the movie in a really clever way because now you're looking at, in the narrative that we're watching on Mars, the company is having to add things to continually get him to keep buying in that it's real.
Yeah.
So it really always
cool.
protects itself either way. It's really fun.
That's interesting. Yeah. I do like this sort of, again, like, look, whether you believe it or not, I actually think you're probably right. But again, like, it's one of those things where I don't want to question it too far because I'm enjoying the journey too much. I guess that's the way I put it. Like,
yeah.
Like,
well, I like what you said. It doesn't matter either way.
I can question as much as I want. I'm having such a good time watching the movie.
Yeah. This does lead me to my biggest problem of the movie, though, right? Which is, imagine you're a dude who's married, and you're like, I don't like my job, my wife, like, my marriage is pretty cool. I'm married to Sharon Stone. That's pretty awesome in this age.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you have an implanted dream where you're a badass secret agent who's with a athletic, slutty, debonair lady, running around murdering. You kill your wife in your fucking fantasy. And then you wake up and have to go back home.
Ooh, you know what?
And it's
actually,
like, well, you still have the memory. This is the thing. The value of a recall memory has to be negated by the fact that someday you wake up and realize it's all bullshit. You still have the realistic memory, right?
Right.
It's like if you have a VR video game. Well, I can go back, but I still know it's virtual reality. When he goes back to Sharon Stone and he's like, oh, you don't have a bullet hole in your head.
Wait, okay.
His memory is ruined.
I'm now fully on your side, by the way, that this is all recall because the Sharon Stone, it's not the blue sky Mars. It's the Sharon Stone factor. Because everyone knows if you're going, your marriage is in trouble for sure if you're going on vacation to memorably murder your wife in a simulation.
Right. You know, and he did not.
This is all definitely fake, without question.
He punches her in the face. He shoots her in the face. He has the From Russia with Love, like, oh, my sexy dream girl and my wife are gonna catfight in front of me.
He even has like that.
Come on.
He even has a fucking sign-off line after he smokes it too.
Thing is though. Yeah, that's true. Oh, that's true. His one-liners in this are so good. They're
so
commando level good, the one-liners. When he's like, Benny, screw you! No. But here's the Sharon Stone thing that I was like, this absolutely is a fantasy. So he's being tracked down by Michael Ironsides.
Right.
And there's that great line where we find out that Sharon Stone is Michael Ironsides' actual girlfriend. So Michael Ironsides is a digital cuck. Right? And Michael Ironsides' buddy sits there and goes, yeah, and I would hate to have my old girl getting plowed down by Arnold. And he's like, what? Like, she's doing her job. And the guy goes, yeah, I'm sure she's hating that. And I was like, that is such male wish fulfillment. It's like, not only am I so fucking unbelievably good in bed, but, you know, Michael Ironsides is now sad because I've also one-upped him. I was like, the digital cuck aspect definitely adds to the fantasy argument.
Digital cuck. Oh, my God.
When his friend said that line about, I'm sure she's hating that, I fucking lost my shit laughing. It's so fucking good. It's so amazing. Because this is the other weird thing in the movie, too, is a guy like Arnold, it's like, why do you need the dream vacation?
Yeah.
You're like the gratuitous jackhammering scene. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, what is wrong with your life?
How shitty is your life that you have to plow?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Digital
You're
cuck.
super jacked, obviously have some money, and you're married to Sharon Stone. Like, man, poor guy.
You're fine. Go home.
White girl problems, am I right? He's like, I'd really rather murder people and show up a digital cuck. Like, I need this in my life.
God, yeah, like,
Yeah,
how emasculated must you be?
There's
at
a lot
home
of
for needing
evidence. What are other pieces of evidence that let us weigh in on if this is real or not?
I mean, definitely most of the cool stuff in Venusville, like the lady with 3 boobs. There's no way that happens. Not in 24.
That could be real. See, that to me is the realest thing.
Not in 2084. No way.
Are you telling me that once humans start manipulating genetics, the first thing that some guy wouldn't be like, what about more boobs?
I think.
At the end of the day, we're also lizard-brained humans. Not that. There would be one scientist.
But see, there's the rub right there. You said you're telling me like if we started genetically modifying people, a guy would absolutely do that. I don't think a woman would.
But she's sitting there using it to help her apply her trade more effectively.
I mean, what? Okay, how many hookers?
That's her
how many
move to
hookers
every
do you?
customer is.
How many
hey,
hookers? How many hookers do you know have enough money for a good boob job, let alone mutated 3-tip?
Are you kidding me? I think a lot of those ladies, especially high class ones, are making lots of monies.
Excuse me. Could the currency on Mars really be that good? It's probably like Monopoly money. I mean,
no, but I mean the economy would all scale. Like you think there's some like Beverly Hills level plastic surgeon that's living in the Dust Bowl of Mars? No.
I can't believe this is the conversation we're having right now. the
I'm just saying,
the economics
totally
of Mars.
Realistic. Yeah. I think it's totally realistic that a lady of the night would be like, dude, I'm going to get a lot of extra money. Like, these things will pay themselves off in no time.
By that rationale, sure. But you got to get there first. I don't know. I'm not sure I'm buying it.
Yeah, the whole Mars thing in this movie is so funny. And again, it's cool because we see Arnold before as like one of these news junkies.
Yeah.
So he's obsessed with Mars, period. And now he gets to partake in part of the fantasy. I don't know. I think it's one of my favorite things is, so let's assume that it's all a false reality, right?
Okay.
Because immediately he gets out, he kills his work buddy.
Right.
So I was like, all right, that's not great evidence. Like, he wouldn't want to kill his fat friend who buys him a drink. We learn that he's amazing at murder by neck snaps. And you're like, wow, okay, this is getting really dark. Running around. There's a lot of these moments where you're like, how did he escape? He would get caught, fine. I think where the movie gets really interesting is when he gets the briefcase. And one, I like the thought that a wet towel can defeat, like, future technology.
Right.
So then you have giant Arnold running around with the towel on his head. And then he opens a briefcase and talks to himself.
Yeah.
This is a really fun extra wrinkle they add.
This
is
love
a
that
false
shit.
reality within a false reality.
Yeah. I love that scene, by the way. That is.
And it has my favorite Arnold line, "Howdy, stranger."
Okay, yeah. Making him like I this is something I absolutely adore about like movies that star Arnold Schwarzenegger that clearly weren't supposed to star him, by the way, because like first off, like if movies that star Arnold Schwarzenegger are written for him, and like they're written for him because he has like I don't know, I'd say like grand total over a 2-hour movie 30 lines, like he has so much dialogue in this movie that he obviously couldn't. But like, howdy, stranger, like those kinds of things. Like those little affectations that he's not obviously not like an improv guy, so he's not going to like change it to anything in his vernacular. He's just going to go, howdy, stranger. Yeah, it's completely normal for this guy to talk like that, 100%. Like, I love watching Arnold Schwarzenegger in those kinds of movies because, like,
that guy howdy strangered himself to one of the highest offices in the land.
Well, hey, I'm not saying he could.
That's power.
I'm not saying the guy can't be a governor. What I'm saying is he can't say howdy, stranger, and make me go, oh, that's a totally normal way for that guy to talk all the time.
I'm sure that guy is somewhere. He grew up somewhere where they say howdy.
Austria?
I like that part, man, because this is where we also start.
Austria is more of a Heil Hitler country, I believe.
Oh, that's
anyways.
True. Well, we actually start the pull the collar. No, we actually start. This is where we also start. Besides the opening scene, where we do awesome, amazing prosthetic Arnold face gags.
Oh my god, yes.
Where he's pulling the implant out of his nose. Because we start at the first scene where they're on Mars, right? And his helmet breaks. He's like, and his eyes are bulging out, and it's amazing. See, my brother said that. He's like, well, they start on Mars, so maybe that's him remembering his past. And I was like, or they say later that the Total Recall program is that you are somewhat the author of whatever they put in your brain.
Right, right.
So maybe that, I don't know. I still think it's all fantasy, but it's awesome. But yeah, the prosthetic Arnold faces in this are so fucking good and so prevalent. So many shots of Arnold's face that I don't know we needed. Another great example. The nose is great. The bulging eyes and stuff is great. When Arnold takes off his giant lady costume, do we need a prosthetic head under the prosthetic head that he takes off?
I know, right? I've always been kind of curious about that, like why that was the choice. Because, like, clearly whoever did the prosthetics that day, like they were like caught on short notice because his like face is like he looks like
the expression they give with like the duck lips to the side is very
he looks like he might have had like some sort of grand mal seizure for like 5 seconds. We're just like, but like I didn't understand why that, because there's clearly somebody's hands on the head when it comes down, but like I was like, why are we doing, like, again, it's another great example of what was required of practical effects at the time. Like, that's a really fascinating thing, and it's something that Paul Verhoeven has done, like, does in his movies. Like, I mean, he still had so many practical effects even in Starship Troopers. Like, Starship Troopers has a ton of practical effects that probably should have been digital. Like, I think
that was funny because that one is so much of a deluge of CG in that movie.
I know, right? Like, all of it
still need to do that much practical is pretty interesting.
Tons of practical, yeah. It's a really fascinating, but yeah, I mean, like the Arnold faces,
the giant lady suit to me
wonderful.
though, that's another.
The what?
My God, they're so good. But I was gonna say the giant lady suit to me, that's another prime example of this being fantasy.
Right.
That these guys both just happen to hit port at the exact moment. And also, it's like one of those weird, like the guys, especially on Mars, where they see 3 titties and nutsack faces and mutants. They see a guy take a giant lady robot head off.
Yeah.
And everyone there's like 20 guys with guns are like, long enough for him to throw a bomb and then make his getaway.
Love it. God,
like, come on.
It's so wonderful.
You would be wasting. But then they do a clever job, right? They backtrack that as well because we learn. Because this is one of the questions in the movie. Is like, why is this guy still alive if he's a secret agent who can bring this whole operation down?
Right.
Him and Cohagen are country club buddies. That's good writing. That's clever.
It is good. I'll give you that. 100%.
It's the biggest problem of the movie is like, if this guy has all the problems, why just send him to Earth and say, hey, you can just have a sexual relationship with Sharon Stone and like have an awesome life if he can bring down your whole operation? Like, imagine watching Chinatown if they're like, oh, Jake knows about the water. You want a 10 and like a house down the road? It'll be cool. He'll never come back and fuck this up.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't. I definitely, having now talked about it and definitely considered the Laurie Quaid of it all, I definitely believe that he's still in the simulation. Do you think he's like permanently in the simulation?
No, I think he plays his thing out really well, right?
Right.
The scene that I love, too, because they steer into this where it does seem like in a closed system like Mars, it would be really hard to travel around as this guy, even with your false badges. So you get rid of that hurdle, right? But the scene that I love is when his wife actually shows up at the apartment,
right,
with the guy who's like, I am a deep program doctor who's in here to tell you that you're fucked up on Total Recall's table. I'm here to tell you that you are having a problem. You need to wake up now.
What's the
And I
phrase
thought
they
about
use?
it. I was like, this is a brilliant. It's a brilliant addition to Total Recall's program, right?
Right.
Because they're just called Recall. My brother again said that Total Recall is a wink and a nod that it's reality, right? Total Recall would insinuate that he's recalling like the totality of his past. Neither here nor there. I don't think that's as strong of evidence as the others.
No.
But when they bring the doctor in, imagine that your whole job is we're going to put you in a simulation, and then in your simulation, building in a doctor who's telling him, stop doing the fun shit, or you're going to be a vegetable in the real world.
Right.
Wake up now, and then adding the sweat drop, and you have to rely on the fact that the customer is just a murder fucking boner.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
Arnold's a murder boner. That's what he becomes in this movie.
The sweat drop.
How many people, like, if that was you, I know you well enough. If that was you, and that guy said that in the middle of your fantasy, you'd be like, oh, man, I don't want to risk being a vegetable.
Well, that's true.
Right?
But I will say if
you would get out of there. I think I would, too.
I think I would. I mean, yeah, but but this is the other thing. And this
It's
is
the
like
Cyrus from the Matrix argument.
But
better to be in the false reality having more
right,
fun
but that's
or
the
wake
other
up.
thing, though, is like within the simulation, Quaid's program is supposed to like elicit that he's some sort of secret agent. So, like, if our program, like, if you and I were in this and our programming was like, oh, we're trying to be like a secret agent who's trying to like help overthrow the government of Mars, blah blah blah, we would be sort of like, I guess, pre-exposed, like predetermined to notice strange things like that, though. Like, if it was just me, I'd be like, oh, fuck, yeah, unplug me, please, for the love of God. I don't want to be a vegetable. That's terrible.
Yeah, right. I want to get back to Sharon Stone.
Yeah,
Like, that's pretty
if this is my real wife, that's fine. I'll just get out of here and I'll go home and plow. Like, this,
Yeah.
It is what it is. But
And you're like, I got to the part of the fantasy, and the dream girl slapped me and told me to fuck off forever, so I'm kind of
I'm
out of here.
I'm done. Yeah, there's a bunch of weird mutants around. I didn't get to have sex with that 3-tittied lady. I mean, like, I'm good. I saw everything.
You and the 3 tits. That was a seminal thing, because I think I saw that
It's
when
a
I was like
big
10 years
deal,
old, and you're
dude.
like, oh my God.
That was like, I mean, that's one of those,
my
like,
God.
it's amazing to me because it's one of those little, like, kind of, it's one of those weird little, like, because this is the kind of movie you'd watch. This is like shows up on television. Like, this is the kind of movie you'd see, like, by accident, because this is the first time I saw it was totally by accident. Like, I was young enough where I was still, like, really into Arnold. Like, I had just seen Terminator 2, and I was just watching a bunch of movies, like, and I was young enough, and I saw Total Recall, and I remember seeing those 3 titties, and I was like, whoa, a girl can have 3 boobs? Like, obviously, it's fucking, you know,
Yeah.
but when you're a kid, it's amazing.
That's
And-
how we saw it, because it became legendary amongst, like, the playground. Like, dude, I saw a movie. This girl had 3 boobs. And I was like, what? Get out of here. That happened to me twice, because that was the same thing. I saw Mallrats, and the first thing my buddy told me about it, he's like, there's a lady who shows her boobs, 3 nips. And I was like, what?
Yeah. See, that's what it is.
So,
Like,
we were just young and dumb guys.
Yeah,
where
when
it's
you're
like,
young and
wait,
dumb and
3's
just
the
like-
magic number.
yeah, where you're like, oh my God, like, it's something weird. That's something weird and cool that's on something sexy that you like. Like, again, but ultimately, if you're programmed to think you're a secret agent, you'd notice those weird little picadillos about people. Like, you'd notice a sweat drop.
This is the other thing. Right. I'm saying, but you have, I mean, I guess that's the thing, right? Is for me and you, we would never choose secret agent, probably.
No.
Like, my fantasies are so much different than that. Mine would be like, I just want to be in like a quiet room that has all the books and movies and video games and no sounds around.
My
Like,
my
that's
fantasy.
like my daydream. So I'm way more boring and would unplug.
Yeah.
But think about this though. So not only is the program designed to, it has to do the wake up, this is not real, even though they want you to stay in the fantasy. Then they do the sweat, and he has to make a moral decision, which they've already pre-assumed that he would make to kill this guy.
Right.
Then they have the whore girlfriend show back up, and then they force him. This is the scene where they give him like 3 tests in a row to decide if he's going to buy this fantasy or not. So once the hooker girlfriend shows up, he has to side with, I will help the hooker kill my wife, or else the believability of the fantasy collapses. Right? So right away, we're like, Arnold is way more disturbed and down to fantasize than we imagined.
Yeah, Arnold's life is truly terrible. Like, let's get that on Front Street now.
So right away, you're like, someone's telling you, you were at the table, you know you were there. Something's gone wrong. If you kill me, you'll become a vegetable in real life.
Right.
Then you go out, and it's like, okay, I'm kind of buying in. This must be real, but I still don't know. I'll just kill my wife. What the fuck?
Like,
it tells you a lot about the recall business model.
Yeah, like, we need to examine, like, what the basic clientele for recall itself has got to be, like, people who, like, for instance, Quaid's original, like, whatever his job is supposed to be, Quaid's original job is a construction worker. So how terrible is construction work in 2084 that he has to go fantasize about not only putting himself in mortal danger on a regular basis, but then, like, murdering his wife and, like, hanging out with whores and all kinds of stuff. Like, how terrible is Quaid's life? Like, that's the sequel. Like, going to Quaid's real life.
Right. Well, let's do the economy again. I will guarantee you, whatever a recall fantasy cost, it's $1 less than a divorce. This is the last step before it's like, we're just going to have to split up half our shit. Like, this is what this is, right? Can I get myself 3 years down the road by, murdering my wife in a fucking virtual reality simulation? Because I love this, too, because this series of moral challenges, which are crazy, then lead us to the stretch of the movie where it just goes apeshit sci-fi.
Yeah.
Like, this is where we find out Benny's got the mutant hand.
Uh-huh.
This is where Cohagen's shutting off the air and is just like, I'll just kill a whole fucking group of people. Probably the coolest part of the movie to me, this is where we meet Quado.
Yeah, Quado.
Oh, my God. I mean, again, this is also awesome prosthetic work, right?
Oh, yeah, I love it. Like, this is,
oh, my God.
Like,
Quado, to me,
the homunculus living inside
George.
George.
I remember most about this movie.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That was another thing.
It's fucking crazy,
creature work in this movie is amazing. Did you know the guy did the voice for Quado, too? The guy who played George did the voice for Quado as well. Although I didn't know that. I've read that.
Did he really?
Yeah, I read that recently. That was fascinating.
I didn't know that.
So, there you go. But
I love Quado, man.
Quado's great. Like, it's one of those awesome, like, man, just the makeup effects work is just so good in this movie. Like, it should be dated too. Like, we should be watching it and kind of like, oh, wow, that's kind of sad. Like, oh, it doesn't look as good anymore. But, like, fuck, dude, it still looks so cool. Like, and I'm sure there's a little bit of rose-colored glasses going on, but it looks so cool, man. Like, come on.
Yeah, but I mean, even the Arnold faces, you're like, yeah, that's probably not. It's a little laughable.
Sure,
but there is a charm to it.
There's
a charm to it. You're like, well, I haven't seen something like that. Like, that's
when's the last time you saw that?
There's a huge value in that in movies, right?
Right.
Like, yes, you could give me a more computer accurate image of what that would look like.
Right.
I kind of like just seeing art. Like, I think that's fucking hilarious.
It's wonderful,
and they do it 10 times in the movie, and I love it.
Yeah,
but I like this whole section too because I heard Seth Rogen say this once. I think he did a Rotten Tomatoes, like his 5 favorite movies.
Yeah, and
he said Total Recall. And he's like, what I love about Total Recall is it shows you, because this was a big, like, mainstream hit, right?
Right.
They're like, all of our parents would have seen. And he said, I like Total Recall because it shows you how far an audience will go with you on a movie journey if you just do it well.
Yeah, totally.
And I think about this movie now, I'm like imagining my mom and aunts and uncles watching this for the first time who are not sci-fi people.
Right.
Not, creature movie people. And just being like, what the fuck is happening?
Well,
because it's done so well and earnestly,
right,
and has this fun reality bending where my mom and dad can be like, "Oh, it's fake."
Right.
Like, we would never kill each other in a dream, honey. Wink. I think that's it is really fascinating how far they take this movie.
Well, it's really,
then it's like, oh, here's Quado. Now there's like a giant alien fucking reactor. Like,
yeah,
it gets completely
that's
out
the
of
thing that I think is really fascinating about this movie is up until this point, like, even going to Mars is pretty conventional sci-fi. Like, we're not at a point where we're like so far gone from what we're used to, but like the introduction of Quado, like as soon as fucking George turns around and reveals this like homunculus living inside him, and they start talking, is this like amazing hard left turn into what should be a like movie killing amount of sci-fi, because to that point, like, no one should be on, like, that to me is like one of those things, like, if you can't make that pivot like they did, like, if you had gone like a scotch less, you would have been fucked. Like, this movie would be absolutely like,
imagine this, Alex.
Unequivocally
imagine
one of the
you're
worst.
an executive, right? Yeah, imagine you're an executive. And they say, hey, here is our prosthetic we made for a character named Quado on Mars.
Right.
And they showed you that fucking work. Would you assume that was the good guy hero of the Martian people?
Right, yeah, exactly.
Right?
No, totally.
That's an incredible thing they pulled off. That's unbelievable. They made us humans so ugly and repulsive.
I mean, on that level,
that
too,
guy's belly brother is the hero.
Right. I mean, even on that same beat, imagine being an exec and getting that script and seeing that hard left turn and be like, I don't know how the fuck you guys are going to make this work. Did you know that at the time in 1990, this had been the most expensive movie ever made? $65 million. This was the most expensive movie that had been made.
That doesn't shock me at all, because almost none of those sets and locations exist.
No.
They probably had to build every fucking thing we
100%.
saw.
But like at the same time,
They have a
imagine
giant
dumping
driller,
65
they've got cars,
like,
they've got...
Imagine
Yeah.
in 2019, we're now like in such a different time than the world of Total Recall being released. Yeah. Like, imagine in 2019, someone handing over $65 million to an adaptation of a Philip K. Dick story. I mean, now obviously we're all cool with Philip K. Dick, like, you know, like, but in the 90s, like, people were still kind of, it was what, like, it was fucking Blade Runner. Like, Blade Runner was everything everybody knew about, like, Philip K. Dick's oeuvre that made them excited. And imagine now trying to get something like that made, which was an adaptation of a sort of an obscure sci-fi story. Like, unless you're going to do like an Arrival with it and make it like a serious like Oscar fare, no way.
I think you mentioned that they did that at one point, but that seems to be a black hole in my memory. I can't remember.
This?
They tried to do something called Total Recall, but it was not the same, and I don't remember it.
Yeah, I don't know. They might have. Yeah, I think, I don't know. My implants are acting up, so it could be anything. Who knows?
Yeah, weird. God, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I've seen that in the $5 bin at Walmart. I can't remember. No.
But yeah, man, Quado's so good.
No,
dude.
I mean, it's insane. But I always am amazed when something like this, you look back, and again, like you said, just imagine how many people got that script and are like, yeah, this is cool.
Yeah.
Like, it gets fucking insane. And just the power of Arnold and, like, the vision and the ability to get this thing across the finish line. And for so many people in the general public to be like, yeah, we'll go on that journey with you.
Right.
I think that's incredible, man. I remember a time when I'd be like, yeah, I want to watch Battle Beyond the Stars or something. And someone would be like, oh, God, there's like aliens with makeup and spaceships. Ugh. And this movie's just like, yeah, we're going to give you all that. Yeah. But Arnold kills people. And you're like, great.
I mean, I mean, like, that's like the best part is they make this turn to like hard sci-fi, like very weird sci-fi late enough in the movie where if you weren't hooked already, like, you weren't going to be on board regardless. This is like the thing I love the most.
But,
like everything regarding
that,
Quado through the third
Cohagen.
Yeah.
Right, but yeah, so you get the weird turn like you're saying, but then they immediately go back to something that the average parent's like, oh, I've seen that on TV.
Right.
The Cohagen, right? The country club buddy, like, Hauser, you're in my suit. I need to get rid of you. I am the criminal. And our parents are like, oh, fuck, like, that's just like Dallas. Right? Like, they can relate to the backstabbing, guy.
Right.
And so it's this brilliant mix of, is it real? Is it not? Whoa, look at that fucking belly guy. All of a sudden, oh, man, he's a betrayer. And then you got Benny the Judas. Like, it is this really brilliant mix of a lot of different kind of things.
Benny the Judas. Boy, oh, boy.
Benny the Judas, man. He ain't got no kids to feed, motherfucker. I hate Benny. But then Benny gets screwed in the end.
Oh, yeah. Benny gets fucking iced. It's fine. It all works out.
That. I mean, it makes sense. If I was Benny, I would fucking betray them, too.
Yeah, why not?
Like, yeah, I live in the fucking red dirt and can't get oxygen. Fuck you guys. I would totally do that.
But yeah.
Especially once you find out Hauser's a betrayer anyways.
Here's my thing, too, about, like, what it is, what the recall engine is itself for Quaid / Hauser and his, like, brain. I'm not sure I would necessarily characterize like what the story is, because I wouldn't characterize the story as like externally the recall people are like constantly trying to have to come up with new storylines. I feel like this is all Quaid. Like, this is all Quaid's brain, like working with the learning engine, you know?
Right. Well, I think it's like one of your things you mentioned a lot, like with it, right? This is a choose your own adventure where they will give you the basic parameters and kind of the beats of where these things end up. But Quaid himself has to author a lot of this. So my excursion to Mars Secret Agent movie would look very different than yours.
Right. Well, I think that's...
Like in mine, I probably wouldn't kill my wife. I'd maybe like handcuff her and bring her with me and be like, come on, remember the good times?
Well, that's what's interesting.
Remember
like,
Wii tennis in the living room?
the one thing I remember, or the one thing watching this movie, like watching it again, I realize how much of this informs like Inception, like a shocking amount.
Are you about to do another shot at Inception? Do you think there's a movie pod
No,
that hates Inception more than we do?
I'm not making a shot. I'm saying what I'm saying is that this
I know
movie,
you were about to take a shot.
I wasn't. What I was going to say is there's
Inception
a lot.
is Sharon Stone, and you're trying to fucking ventilate it.
No, but like this movie, like the concept of questioning, like the really like like the summation of this month, even like in questioning reality, we realize that there are a lot of tenets of this genre, the subgenre of movies that actually all sort of borrow from what I think is probably like Total Recall might be one of the most famous, like, is it or isn't it movies.
Right.
Like it's one of those things where like everything since 1990, whenever you try to make a movie about like, is it or isn't it? Like you're going to borrow some aspect of this from to like make to work in your story. Just like Inception is about shared dream sequences. So Inception's about shared dream sequences, but it relates back to the person who's actually dreaming. So the person who's actually dreaming has to believe they're dreaming. But the person who believes they're dreaming is also in a situation where they realize they are kind of dreaming. It's literally the exact same model, and Total Recall sort of is the blueprint for these movies about how to live within your dream while still knowing you're dreaming. I don't know. It's fascinating. Like,
I mean, yeah, this gets back to like one of the most ancient human questions, right? Is anything real, right? And what I love about, and again, I think Total Recall's real power, right? Because at the end we're getting insane, right? Like fights and murders and running around,
bombs, decompression,
stuff, right?
Glaciers, all kinds of shit.
It's crazy. But what this movie does is it always is pulling you back and forth between real, not real, but never at the sake of stopping the forward progress or changing the amount you care about what's happening.
No, very important.
Because this is something to me, too. I despise the, like, oh, it was all a dream ending of movies.
Right.
I hate any movie where at the end you're like, well, none of that happened, so none of it matters. This might be the only exception where there's an entire movie where I assume nothing I watch happened or had any real value or stakes, and I don't give a shit. I love the journey.
Why do you think that is? That is a pretty important thing about like the way you like and watch movies. Why do you think this is the exception?
I think what it is they do a really clever job of, I think they put us in the audience in the seat where we get to choose, right? Are you a person that is not happy in your life and you want to go on a journey of wish fulfillment? You can believe that this is real. Are you a little more cynical and just want to watch this as like a fun game? Sure. And I don't know why it doesn't bother me. If I honestly had to put my finger on it, I don't know that I could. But what I think I would say is that I'm always fascinated by movies that let me have fun things to ponder outside of, right?
Sure.
So for me, realizing that this story and dream sequence has no real stakes or value if it's all a fantasy.
Right.
But the moment he wakes up and has to go back home and look at his wife and be like, oh, fuck, I shot you in the face. The best memory of my life that I just paid for is always going to involve you having a bullet hole in your face. Right?
Right.
Like, that is a real world consequence. So in a weird way, while none of the things we see on screen matter and have actual stakes, right? Because it's not real. When he wakes up, he is going to be questioning his entire, like the stakes of now what happens in that marriage and what is the value of a recall dream. I think that stuff is so fun. I think that's the thing is the world, it almost lets me inhabit my own fantasy world where I get to decide my own adventure in memory of this movie.
I mean, I think that's the long and short of it. Like, and this is something that speaks to just you as a viewer and you as someone who consumes is the thing that you prefer is like what you like is that you've seen the movie. So when you leave the theater, you're like, Well, after you get out of the recall machine, you have to go home and confront the fact that you totally fucking killed that person that you supposedly love. You shot them in the face.
Real.
And you, like,
For real.
But I think that's what
and punched her just for good measure before.
But that's that's an important aspect about all of our personalities is like walking out of this movie, like finishing Total Recall. The reason you enjoy it and the reason like you're giving it the exception to the rule, so to speak, is because what it is it's the examination of wish fulfillment and how important that is to us. But also at the same time, examining that wish fulfillment and then like thinking about it globally when you get out of the recall machine and you're like, well, now I have to go home and face this, and I did something truly terrible to my partner in there. Like, I think that speaks a lot to who you are in general, but I also understand that completely. Like, that's what makes this all the more worth it to watch.
Yeah, and that to me is the thing, right? Is at the end of your none of this is real, whatever, as long as there is an impact of this journey, even if it happens after we, see the credits, right, and it has to happen in our mind, that's still a lot of fun for me. I can play that game because to me, the most fun I ever have in movies is just pondering the questions of the movie. That's way more fun than just being like black and white. This is what I saw at 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. I like to think about, in comic books, we talk about that's the power of the gutter, right? That space in between panels.
Right.
Is when you see this thing here and your eye moves to the next panel, that empty space is rife for you to fill yourself. It's an inherently participatory part of the medium, right? And I do that with movies, and this one lets me do that really in a fun way, right? Like, I remember at the end of the movie, I was like, how long would it take to make an atmosphere? Right. I think everyone still dies because the atmosphere blows all the windows out, and I think they're all dead. And then you're like, well, they have oxygen. All right, but too much oxygen can poison you to death. That's like, I think that's a wildly insane way to end the movie, but I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
And even Arnold says at the end of the movie, right? I just had a terrible thought. What if this is all a dream? And she just says, well, if it is, kiss me.
See,
I think that's a beautiful way to end because, again, it doesn't fucking matter. It literally doesn't matter if it's real or not. I think it's really clever, man. It's a really clever way to end this movie.
Yeah. No, it's exactly the way you should end a movie so that we actually give a shit that none of this is real, so to speak. Like, the point of this...
And after Hauser, it does get in this where it's just a lot of, like, doing your action check marks.
Yeah.
And it's less interesting, but you're still pondering these bigger things.
There are 4 items that I actually wanted to point out trivia-wise that I don't know if you knew this.
Let's do it.
The original... Dino De Laurentiis was one of the original producers on this. After the guys who Dan O'Bannon and Ronald Shusett, who wrote Alien, they had bought the rights to You Can Buy It for We Can Remember For You wholesale. They wrote this. It was in development hell, and then in the 80s, Dino De Laurentiis bought it with Richard Dreyfuss attached.
Is the main guy
as Quaid?
Ooh, I like that.
But
I think it is weird because Arnold's so fucking jacked.
Yeah.
And he's Mr. Universe to us, right? Like, it is hard to imagine him, like, is an average man sometimes. That's fascinating, man. I would like the Dreyfuss version.
Also considered for the role was Patrick Swayze.
I mean, Patrick Swayze would have been perfect.
Would have been good.
Because he is, even though he looks like this fucking little angel, right? This little, beautiful, coiffed hair angel.
Oh, yeah, it would have been great.
He's still like a tiny little man.
By the way, this was the time period, too. This was immediately following Dirty Dancing.
I wonder how big Swayze was. I just called him a tiny little man. He might have been 6'2" for all I know.
I don't know. I mean, like, I don't know. I actually just watched...
I'm from the Midwest and people are gigantic on average.
I don't know. I recently watched Tu Wong Fu. He seemed pretty big.
Little tiny guy.
He was a tall dude.
Yeah. He was always, like, really in shape. Like, again, to call Patrick Swayze an average man, it's like, I live in a neighborhood full of average men. My wife would scoff at that. Believe that. But I would have watched either of them. I think Dreyfuss is actually a little more interesting.
So before Paul Verhoeven was brought on, the original director for this was supposed to be David Cronenberg.
Oh, God. That would have been awesome. Imagine those prosthetic shots with Cronenberg at the helm. Cronenberg got in constant fights with Dan O'Bannon and Ronald Shusett.
On the Wikipedia page, he's quoted saying, "I worked on it for a year and did about 12 drafts. Eventually, we got to a point where Ron said, 'You know what you've done? You've done the Philip K. Dick version.' I said, 'Isn't that what we're supposed to be doing?' And he said, 'No, we want to do Raiders of the Lost Ark, Go to Mars.'"
Oh, God.
So Cronenberg actually wanted to cast William Hurt for Quaid in his version.
I love William Hurt.
But then when Dune flopped, De Laurentiis decided not to move forward with it. And that's what happened.
Yeah. God, that is like one of those Hollywood tough parts, right? Is when you're like, yeah, I really want to do this source material and I love it and I want to do it. And then they're like, make it but this movie, right? Like, it's one of those things you learn in pitches. It's like, we're doing Jaws with an alligator.
Yeah. Well,
like, what does that mean? What are you saying? Like, what the fuck?
Well, so like, I mean, like, but that's like the crazy thing too is so Cronenberg, De Laurentiis didn't want to do it anymore, and then as soon as De Laurentiis put it in turnaround, apparently Schwarzenegger had apparently wanted to do this already, and he had been turned down. Like, there is some amazing, like, weird back channel history to this that ends up being the Total Recall we got. We could have gotten Richard Dreyfuss directed by David Cronenberg. Like,
I love this movie so much, to think about changing it hurts me, but I would honestly love to see that Dreyfuss.
I think I would too, actually. Like, I
that would be nuts.
I think it would be insane. And look, I absolutely adore this, but how fucking crazy would it have been to see Richard Dreyfuss or Patrick Swayze for that matter, as Quaid, directed by David Cronenberg? Like, that is some bizarre shit, man.
I love alternate history versions of movies, man.
Yeah.
Like, imagine The Matrix with Will Smith. I love all those theories, right?
I love it.
It adds a fun layer the next time you see the movie.
It does. But yeah, I
like that.
Those are like 2 or 3 things I read that were just bizarre. But I also love the idea of Cronenberg doing 12 drafts and absolutely hating the writers of Alien for trying to write something else entirely. That might be the most Cronenberg thing ever. It's like, aren't we supposed to be adapting this book? Like, no, we're supposed to be making it a movie, you idiot. Like, that's classic.
The adaptation is a tough trial.
It's fascinating.
It's tough.
But
hey, I mean, whatever the process, we got one of my favorite movies ever.
100%. Love it.
So I think that's rad, man.
I love this movie, and I will watch it every year from now on. We rewatched and reignited my passion.
I definitely will watch it every time Amy starts messing with me. Right? Every time my wife is being mean, I'm like, I guess I'll go watch Total Recall. Live vicariously through Arnold. No, I'm just kidding. I love you, Amy. I would never ventilate you.
I didn't say anything about you, Andrea.
I would never fight you in our living room. No, guys, at the end of the day, man, Total Recall is just a big, fun, weird movie. And again, I am always impressed that these kind of things happen on the scale they do. I love Total Recall. I hope you do too. I hope you had fun questioning reality with us. We definitely have Dark City and Black Swan on the way. We'll see what else we can get to. Again, we've really overburdened ourselves with our October Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th extravaganza. But we're going to do what we can, guys. If you have suggestions of movies that you love that question reality, hit us up. That's it, man. That's all we got. Rate, review, share. We appreciate it. From the Film Alchemist, I'm Josh Griffey.
Give the people the air. Sorry,
Alex, give the people the air.
And I'm Alex Dandino. We hadn't said it once. I just had to say it once.
That's right. What's your favorite one-liner in the movie on our way out? Give the people the air.
I mean, that's probably my. That's probably.
Is it Benny? Screw you.
No, it's definitely give the people the air.
Yeah, I think that's the iconic one. All right. Hey, we give you the pod. Peace.